What is up, everybody? Welcome on into Press Coverage, where we help you gain an edge in fantasy football. I'm your host, as always, Wyatt Bertolone. With me today, friend and returning guest to the show, Chuck Bass. How you doing? How's your season going?
We're starting with that. I wanted to get a little positive, maybe some optimism going before we got to the reality.
Let's talk about it.
I'm having one of those years where it was going so well, and you can just see every league coming to like a crashing, like train wreck. I'm losing guys at the wrong time. I've got guys coming back from injury that are taken away from my other guys. Like my grasp on a bunch of one seeds is now like, so this Sunday coming up is going to be the most stressful Sunday I've had in a long time. So I'm losing to teams that aren't starting quarterbacks. It's just like, and you can see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, that was me this past weekend where I was going into it, whereas like some teams had fallen on tough times, and now we're like fighting for seeding, like making sure we could stay in the playoffs, And I'll say on Sleeper, I saw a lot more green than red, So last week we pulled out more matchups than I could really hope for. So
Good.
I'm happy there, but it's not over yet. We got another week to finalize this before we get into the nitty-gritty.
No, we do not get to take. We don't get to take this Sunday off.
Jackson wants to ruin my fantasy team, so.
I'll be right there with you, man. I'll be sweating through a tracksuit big time on Sunday, I assure you.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to these players we've got here on the show sheet. Our first one is Bucky Irving, returned in week 13. And I like what the Bucs did. They kind of limited his snaps, but didn't really limit his touches to try and keep him going and get him back into the swing of things. 52.5% of snaps, but 73.1% of the backfield opportunities on the day. Just 12.1 PPR points. But if you were paying attention to the play-by-play going on in that game, he really had 2 touchdowns called back. Then they ran that pass play to Tristan Wirfs for a touchdown. Like, come on, can we get Bucky one more? But are we thinking Bucky's just back after this performance?
That Tristan Wirfs thing really got me because they already had the graphic queued up. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, how do they know? How do you have a Tristan Wirfs touchdown graphic on command? I mean, I know they must do them before everybody before this season, but still it was jarring because I have Bucky on so many teams. And it was really a lot of fun to watch. Rachaad White got the start. They did try to, ease Bucky in, but once he was in the pool, he was neck deep. Rachaad White is still going to be a part of this game. He nearly scored twice. Receiving work, all that jazz. But Bucky, like talking about coming back and winning the job. Sean Tucker, 2 carries, 0 yards, non-factor. I just felt really good because this is a team that is not just getting Bucky Irving back, but also their entire line will be back pretty soon. They got a starting guard back last week, and Mike Evans will be back, which will be huge for Ibuka, and hopefully Baker gets healthy. So this is an offense that has been kind of slumming it up for several weeks now, not playing up to its potential. I think this could be one. They haven't had the run game to do it. I think this could be a major catalyst for them and for fantasy managers going forward.
Yeah, I like the note about Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield, I thought for everything he's dealing with, probably didn't show that injury all that much in this game, which is nice to see. Maybe it's not quite as bad as we thought it could be. This offense could really get a roll here to finish up the season. Bucky Irving, top 12 rest of the season?
Oh, gotta be, especially with other guys that have been floating around in that range. A guy we'll talk about later in the show, kind of, coming back down because of some running back by committees that are going to be expanded, some other injuries across the board, and just the direction I think this offense is going to be trending. I have no problem sliding him. I'd be RB12, RB10. I think you're going to get the Bucky that we saw earlier in the year, the Bucky that you guys were out there drafting in the late first, early second, depending on how bullish you were. I think it's going to, and Chris Godwin, I know he had a big drop, but he's returning to form as well. This is finally what we've been waiting for. I just hope that a lot of you guys aren't going to be out of the playoffs by the time you get to reap the rewards.
Yeah. Now, Bucky Irving has a good chance to finish up strong here, I'd say. Going into the next season, like projecting him for drafts, do you think he's going to be drafted kind of similar ADP as this past year? Or do you think people are going to look at this and say, yeah, I mean, he's a small running back and he didn't hold up in this season where they tried to give him like that full workload? Do you think people will be afraid to draft him at a similar ADP?
I think he won't be, because you're going to see guys this year that I'm be curious to see how let's just say the season ended today, right? I would love to see the perception of a Derrick Henry. Who else was going over there? Saquon Barkley. Like, what are people going to be doing with Saquon Barkley? Hampton. There's like rookies that people are going to be up on, right? Hampton, RJ Harvey. Trevion Henderson, if you guys are somehow still holding bags out there. There just wasn't a lot of guys that I think are going to punch up unless there's some more rookies that end up being drafted in really nice spots. A lot of these offenses are running back by committees that you're not going to take in the early round, kind of like the Bears are right now. And a lot of the other ones just don't have a lot of upside that I think the Buccaneers offense will have. So I think you're going to see a lot of the top 7 or 8 running backs stay the same, sans some of those older guys that are getting up there in age.
That's actually a really good point. Some of those older running backs possibly falling out of favor going into next season. He may not actually change an ADP going into next season because of that. I like that. All right. Second player of the day, Christian Watson. Is he the Packers wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season? It's kind of been acting as that, since he returned from injury, but Jaden Reed out. Matthew Golden's dealing with some stuff, although, his rookie year, not that inspiring. But since returning from injuries, 71.1% of snaps, 75% of the routes, 18.1% target share. Honestly, that's about as good as it gets for a Packers wide receiver in recent years. This past week, 10 targets, only caught 4 of them, but 80 yards and a touchdown. He also got a little carry in there. Had a fine day for us this past week. Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, probably both expected back. Week 14. Sounds like they could be back. Do you think Watson kind of continues this role?
I think it's hard for him not to, for a lot of reasons. And I will say real quick, I remember 2 years ago, you and I came on one of your shows during the halftime of a Packers-Raiders game. And I remember going into the second half of that game, Christian Watson went up for a game-winning deep ball, and a 5'9" cornerback out-jumped him by about a foot. And I remember thinking, this guy's just never he's going to be a deep ball speed threat, nothing else. if Raiders or cornerbacks are mossing him. And now he is winning. He's not just winning jump balls. He's winning double-teamed, contested catch, intermediate routes, crossing routes, down the field rights. He's not just a speed threat anymore. He's become a chain mover and a reliable one, big on third down, big on fourth down. And that's so important for this offense because they're a heavy run early team. So there's not a lot of targets to go around, and there's not a lot of cheap targets to go around. Selfishly, I didn't want anybody to succeed because I was about as heavy of a Tucker Kraft drafter as you're going to find. So I didn't want to have to tune into this team much more this season, but he's become I would say in this iteration of the team, he's become a must start. And I'm not sure what we're going to get from Jaden Reed when he comes back. Tough injury. Not sure we're going to get. I haven't seen anything from a healthy Matthew Golden, and that's not necessarily his fault. I think he's developed well. I just don't think that he's been the player they drafted him to be is who Christian Watson is playing as right now.
Yeah, Christian Watson's kind of an enigma to me because it's like there are days when he just looks like one of the best wide receivers in the league, and like can't be stopped. And there's days when he's healthy and he just doesn't really do anything. He just can't put the game together. He has trouble staying healthy at times. But I do think that you're right. Like in 3 wide receiver leagues, I would have a really hard time not finding a way to get him into my lineup. He is possibly a little boom bust. We know that about him, but he has these big games that can win weeks. It'd be hard pressed for me to not have him in my lineup if I was starting at least 3 wide receivers.
Yeah. And the state of the position plays a little bit of that too, right? I mean, not just the plethora of injuries from, but other guys too, like Brian Thomas Jr., who's not going to be who he ended up being. You've got wide receiver splits in Arizona that we're going to talk about a little bit. The Chiefs do not have the wide receiver weapons we had hoping for. Buccaneers guys are inconsistent. So there's a little bit of he's playing very well combined with you're seeing a lot of guys on the downslide right now for factors that vary from injury to playing ability to all that jazz.
Yeah, we mentioned that Matthew Golden not really doing anything anyway so far this year. And also Jaden Reed, who I really like as a player. We have to remember he's coming back from 2 surgeries. When he messed up his collarbone, he decided, well, I guess I'll get the surgery for my Liz Frank while we're doing that too. So I respect that. Remember, like, just because he's back doesn't mean he's actually back when he's on the field.
Yeah, and we only saw, I think it's just so long ago that I do forget. He only played 1 game. And it was 3 for 45 and a touchdown, and he looked good in limited playing time. But this is just this is a tough offense to ask more than 1 person per game to be effective. There's times this year where I thought Romeo Doubs was going to be how we're talking about Watson right now, and Dontavian Wicks has a huge game, looked very good. It's a good time to own Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I like that. All right, we're going to take a moment to hear about the DFS Dominator, and we come back, we've got some more players for y'all.
So let's put our hoodie on, and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our lineup genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our lineup genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So go fight fire with a Player Profiler DFS Dominator.
Here on Press Coverage with Chuck Bass, and now we're talking about Jaguars wide receivers. This is the first game in which Brian Thomas was healthy after they had traded for Jakobi Meyers. So in this game, Brian Thomas, 74.6% of snaps, 84.4% of the routes, just an 11.1% target share. Jakobi Meyers led the room with 92.1% of snaps, 93.8% of the routes, 22.2% target share. He had a great day. Parker Washington left the game in the second quarter. Up to that point, he was playing in two wide receiver sets. Basically, Brian Thomas was the one who was kind of rotating in, but on the day, just under 40% snaps, under 40% of the routes because of this injury. So we only got to get like a taste of what the three wide receiver set really looks like, because also Brian Thomas coming back from injury. Parker Washington leaves in game. Jakobi Meyers, though, is that guy throughout the entire game. Does it stay that way? Do you think Brian Thomas can take it back from him? What do you think?
I don't think this year, his season very much in particular is reminding me of that Brandon Ayuk doghouse year, his second year. And it's eerily similar how much it actually is, not just from a weird energy perception, but just play on the field, usage, everything like that. And that year, Ayuk finished after a flashy rookie year, finished as the wide receiver 36. And then he bounced back to have consecutive wide receiver 15 and 14 seasons. And I think that's what I should say that's within the range of outcomes for Brian Thomas Jr. It's tough with Travis Hunter there, who's really coming on. But I just think this is a talented guy who's got a little bit of the yips. You know it's bad when he's getting blocking highlights. He had that nice catch and run from Jakobi Meyers. That was a really good play. And the tagline was, "Come for the Jakobi Meyers catch, stay for the Brian Thomas block." And that says everything you need to know. Jakobi Meyers, we talked about the snaps, talked about the targets, leads the team in first read targets since joining. I think he's getting that work that we saw Travis Hunter ease into, kind of like a poor man's Chris Godwin from 2024. The problem with all of these guys that we're talking about, all the names that could come up, is that Brenton Strange continues to look like a good receiving tight end. And I've been missing him all year long. I'm very happy to have him back. So now this is just another situation where if everybody plays at their ceiling, I don't know what this offense even looks like.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm about to say this right now, but like the blocking highlight for Brian Thomas, I'm actually taking a little bit of a positive, because it's like buy-in, and there was some questioning of his buy-in to start the season, some alligator arms out there. But in this game, going out and making that block, I at least like to see them do that. But yeah, I think it's just muddy. I do agree with you. Like, I think this year it's kind of a little bit of a lost season for Brian Thomas. It's unfortunate. He was someone who I was definitely into after his incredible rookie year. I can't believe that the memes about him and Mac Jones really were real, basically, coming into the season. But I like to call out for Brenton Strange as well. He's someone who talked about on this show earlier on in the season, saying, I think this is a guy who's like a fringe tight end one rest of the season, and then he goes and gets injured, and it's like, well, like I thought we had that. It's nice to see him come back and produce that way. But yeah, I think Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver 2-ish type, like maybe a little bit on the low end. And then, I don't know, if you're struggling for some points, you really looking for something, you can start Brian Thomas in a pinch, but I'm not excited to do it. That's where I'm at.
No, not terribly. And Jakobi Meyers, I was really skeptical of the trade, not because of him, not because of the fit, but just because in-season trades, especially at the skill position group, I just never feel that good about them. But it turns out that aspect of Trevor Lawrence's game, where it seems like he's either making a throw so bad you wonder how long he's actually been playing football, or it's such a safe and easy throw that I think I could step on the field and make it. Jakobi Meyers is amazing at the latter, and he's brought that to the offense, which is what Parker Washington was doing. Parker Washington, not a terrific player, just really safe in getting to the spots. Jakobi Meyers has proven to be that as well. Brian Thomas Jr. has become the sacrificial X on this offense, and that's a tough pill to swallow. Could make him a great value in 2026.
Yeah, what Jacoby Myers can do is why I liked Bretton Strange to begin with for this offense, is like just consistent, catches the ball consistently, is there in the right place, which that was a problem for most of the Jaguars wide receivers. Even Parker Washington has trouble with his hands at times this season. So like these players who are just consistent, catch the ball when it's thrown to them, they're going to be valuable in this offense.
I'll be interested to see. Parker Washington did have a hip injury, and this is a team that could be competing not just for the division title, but they went out here. They're looking at the 1 seed, and the offense is rounding into form. So, yeah. So what wrinkles does Liam Cohen continue to introduce into this offense as the season progresses? I'd really like to see. I just think that there's a lot of ways this could go. It's not an offense that I feel like I have a good grip on. I know the pieces on the board. I'm just not quite sure how he's going to play them.
Speaking of teams that you can't believe are competing for a divisional win here, Chuba Hubbard and the Panthers. Did Chuba Hubbard get his job back this game? Because he plays more snaps than Dowdle. Hubbard played 59.4% of the snaps, Dowdle just 42.2. Similar opportunities in the backfield, basically 50-50, but Hubbard much more efficient on these touches. 20.4 PPR points, Dowdle just 9.9. Maybe this is Hubbard's actually healthy again. And when he first came back, he really was not there all the way. And like credit to Dowdle for doing his thing while Hubbard was out, and even once Hubbard got back. But I don't want to say that Dowdle has now run down a bit, but he's just not hitting the explosive chunk gains over and over again, and like he was during that time when he first was starting. But do you think Hubbard has made this a 50-50 split, or do you think that Hubbard has made this a split in his favor? What do you think?
I would say it's going to be a split. It's going to be a hot hand, game dependent script. They have played, and 2 of their last 3 have been pretty brutal. And the 49ers run defense is playing well as of late too. Pretty brutal run defenses. And I think those teams played Dowdle well, and they played the front 7 very aggressively. And I think that's going to favor Hubbard a little bit more if he's able to get out into the flat, make some explosives, because Dowdle's really just been a grinder. Now he's been grinding at a crazy high rate, but I just don't think with Hubbard coming back fully healed from this calf injury, it's going to take a good amount of the passing work. I think this is just going to be a hot hand approach. And I think you can play both of these guys, depending on if you need floor or ceiling going forward. Cause they have a pretty tough matchup going, or not tough matchup. They have a tough schedule to end the season. They end the Saints, they ended the Bucs, Seahawks week 17, which is nobody's going to like seeing that, but that could favor both of these guys, because we've seen Dowdle perform very well against great run defenses, and you've seen Hubbard. Last week we saw Hubbard used effectively against another good run defense by getting him out in space. So I think there's reason to be optimistic if you own both of these players.
I do think there is an element of what teams are doing to the Panthers in regards to Rico Dowdle, because through a big chunk of the middle of the season, the Panthers got to this point where they're just like, we are a smash mouth team. We're going to run the ball. We don't care the game script. We're going to keep running the ball at you. And I think a lot of defense started looking at him and saying like, well, we're just going to crowd the line. And really the only person you have that can beat us is Tedero McMillan. So as long as we like bracket him, crowd the line, can you beat us if we do that? And I think now the Panthers have started to try and like find a way to combat that. We're starting to see them get into some pass heavy game scripts. We're seeing now Hubbard get used out in space like this. So I do think that has affected Dowdle. I still like Dowdle as a player. I still agree with you that like, I think both these players are startable. Like, I don't think you should be afraid to put them in your lineup. Maybe both wide receiver or running back 3 types closer to the RB2s at this point because of the 50-50 split, and it's harder to project which one's going to have the better week in and week out. But I do think that you can start both of them.
Yeah, and I don't want people to be sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, do you try and give some people like perspective on them? Ranking them against some other running backs like rest of the season. Like, I mean, would you rather have Chuba Hubbard or Kenneth Gainwell?
Chuba Hubbard. And that's a tough one because I don't think I want 1 second of what's going on with the Steelers right now. I think that's an unfortunate situation, not just from an injury standpoint, from a vibe standpoint. And that was somebody who, and I think Gainwell's got potential, but I just think that they've got a lot of guys that are being not used in their optimal way. So as far as, let's take a look here just for this week in particular, I'll give you some guys that are around, I mean, because you have the workhorses, right? So I'll ask you a funky one here. Would you rather have any of these guys over, say, these high-end backups, like a Tyler Algier? Would you rather have them over like a Blake Corum ROS?
That is a good question. I mean, obviously you asked the question because those high-end backups represent potentially higher ceiling than either of them and could do that at any point. I would say I would still keep the Panthers boys over them because you can play them now, and we're running out of time for that handcuff situation to come to fruition.
Yeah, it needs to happen.
It has to happen. Otherwise, there's no point to it. But Corum gives me like pause because he is a part of the offense now as well, I think, to an extent. Like this isn't the Panthers backfield, but it's not that far off from being the type of split going on with the Panthers backfield or how it looked, because Corum has looked really good in recent games.
Yeah, and what I was going to say earlier is Bryce Young continues to kind of capture attention for some of these performances that he's been putting on. But these are efficiency performances. He still only threw the ball 20 times. Now, granted, that was not a rainy game. It was it was a rainy game, and that's why they probably limited him. But they have limited him all season long. He is way near the bottom in attempts per game, and that's how this offense knows they want to win games. It's going to be high efficiency and high effectiveness. So that's something I want people to keep an eye on as well going forward, because Tet McMillan gets the headlines, Bryce Young gets the headlines, but this really is still an incredibly run-heavy team.
Okay. I got one more I want to ask you about. Them or either Seattle running back.
Oh, that's so funny. I was going to ask you Kenneth Walker. Yeah, the way it's trending right now, I think I'm feeling pretty good about Kenneth Walker. I know that he's not getting the end zone work these last couple of weeks that we would have seen, but his yards per carry is still pretty high, which is not really a great fantasy stat, but it's a good indicator of performance now versus performance earlier in the season when I know all of the variables, right? I don't like to use it year to year, but as far as how he's being blocked for right now and his effectiveness in these run schemes, and then he gets the Falcons, the Colts, the Rams is tough, but then you end at Carolina, which is a fun matchup for him. I think I like that. You're looking at two. So this question comes down to, do I want a piece of the Panthers offense or the Seahawks offense? Because they're run very similar as far as what they prioritize. So I'll take Seattle there, but it's close.
Yeah, I would say I'd sandwich the Panthers guys in between Walker and Charbonnet personally.
That feels very appropriate. Very appropriate.
All right. On that note, let's get to our last player of the game, or the show. The game. The show is like game. All right. Marvin Harrison Jr. He comes back in this game, just over 60% of the snaps, 64.4% of the routes, 17.5% target share. Does end up leaving at the very end of this game. Michael Wilson, basically a full-time player, but same target share percentage as Marvin Harrison in this game. And watching the game, it was actually Marvin Harrison getting featured early on, and then Michael Wilson kind of picked up as the game went on. Now, this is muddled by the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. may end up missing this next game because of this heel injury. But I kind of want to get an idea of what you think about this pairing in general, rest of the season, and kind of moving forward towards next season. What do you think?
It comes down to if the Arizona Cardinals are willing to admit that we're all watching and agreeing on the same thing that's happening on the field. And that is that the quarterback situation is in desperate need of a change. Jacoby Brissett is second in the NFL with 300-yard passing games, and he did not start a whole lot in the beginning of this year. He is playing well for what he is being asked to do, which is pick up the slack for a tough defense and then play like a veteran quarterback. I would love to see this offense was a truly top 10 passer that has more ability. This is such a tricky one because obviously McBride is an elite wide receiver one that's masquerading as a tight end. He is unbelievable. He's way up there. Marvin Harrison Jr. was looking quite good before this previous injury. He was on his way to where Michael Wilson came out of kind of nowhere, I will say, and delivered those 2 prior weeks of this game. The tricky thing is, I thought this was an offense that could clearly support 2 weapons. Their target consolidation was very consistent with either Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison or Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. And then it just gets a little bit muddied up again this last week because I don't know what the entire game was going to look like. Over half of Michael Wilson's targets came after they lost Marvin Harrison Jr. to that heel injury. So am I going to get more Marvin Harrison development, or is this going to be a high tide that raises all boats? I would just love 4 or 5 more games of them all together so I know for sure.
I think that as long as Marvin Harrison Jr. is healthy, he's like a low-end wide receiver type.
Yeah.
And then Michael Wilson kind of drops down to more of a wide receiver 3. Trey McBride, of course, the man.
Yeah.
There's no doubts about what he's doing. As long as Jacoby Brissett, is there too. This kind of like current iteration of this rest of the season, if this continues, that's the way I feel. And I do think that there is a chance that this continues into at least the beginning of 2026. Like it would not surprise me if the Cardinals move on from Kyler Murray, which honestly at this point seems like a likely situation that they're going to have to go a different direction. They could end up keeping Jacoby Brissett around as a bridge quarterback or just keep him on the roster and see what happens in the offseason. And it may end up being him starting to start the season. And I think that if that continues into next season like that, there are going to be some people who are excited to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. again because of what Jacoby Brissett did in this offense. I don't know if I'm going to buy into that much. I feel like we're on an insanity run here. And like, if this is what the season looks like to start next year, I'm going to be very doubtful that we'll see it again.
Yeah. I can't recall too many times that actually ever ended up working out very well. I think that Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense is maybe the best example of it. But then again, you're talking about an organization that had built up equity in us as trusting them to put together these kind of offenses. And I don't know if you can, that's the only one that I can think of as of recently, but this is also Jonathan Gannon is 15-31. So if they look at this and they go, you've had 3 years, there's been spark, but we're just ready. Maybe there's a hot coaching candidate out there. There's actually a pretty good amount of them. Maybe they want to go in a different direction. While they could still retain Brissett and, have him bridge the quarterback, it would just be more of what we started this conversation, which is I'm just having a lot of trouble telling which mask this team is going to end up wearing when all the chips fall. Marvin Harrison came back from injury and he was the guy. Michael Wilson was going to go back to being Michael Wilson, I think. He looked great deep down the field. He looked great over the middle and intermediate routes. And wide receiver is the one position where, I shouldn't say the one position. It's way more often that when the main wide receiver comes back, whoever was hot just takes they go back to being cold. Running back, not always, but wide receiver, it happens very often. And now he's hurt again. And now we don't know if he's going to play this week. Are they going to be careful with him for the rest of the season, being eliminated for the playoffs? I do not know for sure, but I don't really ever know for sure with this team, and it's paid dividends. So I guess we'll find out.
I want to do a hypothetical here. Let's say it's next offseason. Coaching staff stuck around. At least Jonathan Gannon stuck around. Jacoby Brissett has stayed on this team. Kyler Murray is gone.
Yeah.
And they're at least going into the season with Jacoby Brissett as starter. What round do you think Marvin Harrison Jr. should be drafted in?
Oh, this is a very tough question because it kind of comes down to, it's like the Garrett Wilson thing, to where Garrett Wilson's ADP continued to pay no punishment for continuously underperforming seasons outside of his control. Completely, I would say, because we all saw the talent, we all saw the opportunity, and yet Garrett Wilson's ADP for 3 consecutive years has been league losing. Like I said, not because of factors outside of his control. So I would say he'd be a staple of the 4th round. Feels about right. Pay a little bit of a tax for what this year is, maybe some doubts going into last year, but not too much further because he was kind of going around that 3-4 turn already. So maybe we have him planted firmly in that 4th round.
That's the round I was kind of thinking of. My next question is, would you draft him in the 4th round if this is happening?
I'm in a league right now where he was my wide receiver 1, and I had some other good picks that balanced that out, but I felt better about it this year than I thought I would, considering the inconsistency, I guess you could say. I think I would do it again because I like the way he moves.
I'm going to be on the other side of this. I think I'm probably going to, if this situation goes into next year like this, I'm probably just going to say, I'm good. I'll let other people have the fun of this situation. I'll go in another direction.
Well,
I'll let him beat me.
What is the Michael Wilson contract status here? Is he going to get $15 million from the Bills after they flame out again? Now he's under contract for 1 more year, so we'll see. Turns 26 going into next year. Maybe they think they've got a big three here. Who knows?
That is quite the big three if Michael Wilson is involved. But that was some good stuff there, Chuck. I appreciate you joining me as always. Before we get out of here, though, let everyone know where to find you, find all your work, all that stuff.
Of course, I am host of the Risers and Fallers podcast, putting out weekly here on Player Profiler. I also host the Sunday morning Start Sit show at 8 a.m. So, you're up late at night wrestling on Saturday night. You've had several bourbons and you want to know, do I start Hubbard? Do I start Dowdle? I drafted them both. I will be the first face you see if you want to get up out of bed and join me on Sunday mornings right here on Player Profiler.
What a face to wake up to. I like doing it myself. On this side of things, you can find me on Twitter at YB_FF. You can find my usage report dropping on Player Profiler every single Monday. Sign up to Fast Draft with code WYAT for a $50 deposit match. Like, subscribe, all those things. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.